where are we going to start today, Mark? What have you picked for us?
We're starting with an operator in the Philippines, Globe Telecom. Carlo Malana is CIO of Globe Telecom. Globe Telecom actually was an early innovator. It was the home of SMS. Interesting. I've been in the industry for too long, you can tell. And Carlo's me speaking to Anthony Goodintelek, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Amdocs. So bear with me, and I shall move over and interview these two experts.
Welcome to Amdocs Cloud, where everything is about taking telcos to the cloud.
Oh, sorry.
Happy cloud migration to you. 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 Thank you.
You're next.
Wow, talk about commitment.
Okay, so we may have overdone it with the tattoos, but at Amdocs, we're totally committed to cloud migration. Amdocs, to the cloud and beyond.
Carlo and Anthony, good day. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
G'day, Mark. Nice to be here.
Yes, Mark, great. Looking forward to the opportunity to share a little bit of the Globe story.
Terrific, terrific. So the topic today, it's a very topical, relevant story. Public cloud, cloud growth, and driving new revenues through cloud. So I'm wondering if I can start with you, Anthony. If you can just walk us through where you see the world, the telco world today in terms of the use of cloud, public cloud for driving new revenue streams.
Yeah, look, I think, if you kind of rewind the clock back maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe as an industry, we were kind of slow to kind of get on board on the whole public cloud aspect. But I think where we are today is a completely different space. Almost every one of, our industry globally has a very, very clear cloud strategy, not just a single cloud strategy, but most of them are having, dual cloud strategy, whether it be functional or however they split it. We're looking at areas such as, moving into event-driven, such as serverless, for example. Many of our customers today within the industry are looking at things like multi-access edge and how they utilize it. At the end of the day, our industry has the closest edge presence to any other industry to our customers, right? So this is an amazing asset that can be utilized to move cloud infrastructure globally forward. So it's an exciting time.
And Carlo, if we can turn to you, and those of you who aren't familiar with Globe Philippines has always been an innovator. I've been doing this long enough to remember when SMS Philippines was the home of SMS. So that was a long time ago. We've continued to innovate. So can you walk us through, Carlo, where you feel you're at today in terms of, again, using capabilities such as cloud to drive new revenue streams?
To be perfectly honest, cloud's been a game changer for Globe, right? Especially in this time of pandemic. But this journey started a long whiles ago. Where we are in our journey, we're probably in year 6 or year 7 of our journey. And we started with this whole notion of, getting to the cloud and really starting with a cloud first policy about, 7 years ago. And it was interesting because at that time we were just so glad to get our provisioning from something like 80 days or so for getting their bare metal and getting to a point where we have been able to provision in 5 days. We thought that was fast back then. We had half of our infrastructure at that point over those next couple of years migrated over to public cloud, and then in 2016 we were able to continue to push this. And get our provisioning reduced to about a couple of days. And from there on, it's just been an ongoing journey. In terms of what we've seen from cloud, we've seen quite a bit of reduction in our total cost of ownership. We've seen quite an increase in our uptime compared to our bare metal setup before. And then, it just started to become much more mainstream. There's always the limitation of applications, and that still exists today. As some of the applications start to mature and move on to much newer generation technology, we're able to continue our cloud journey, which I really do think is going to be going on for the next few years.
And in terms of you and your role, Carlo, to what extent do you balance, on the one hand, looking at the benefits that cloud can bring to you internally, efficiency, agility, and what cloud can do for Globe as a business providing services to customers? How and where do those strategies come together?
In Globe, one of the key things we like to do with our business, being one of the larger enterprises in the Philippines, is we like to, shall we say, drink our own champagne, right? So, we like to make sure that any of all the technologies that we're recommending for our other enterprise customers are some of the things that we've also tested in Globe. That seems to be our formula that has worked well for us, is to prove it works well internally, and then being able to apply it to other enterprises with similar business challenges and show how we've solved certain problems. So with cloud, it's been the same story. Globe is definitely a full-blown adapter to cloud. As much as we can, we have adopted to our work tools to cloud. We subscribe quite a bit to concepts such as software as a service providers, and really have embraced that notion of, hey, we can put things in the cloud securely, safely, reliably, and have shown that solution works for us. During this time in the pandemic, it's been quite again in the last year and a half or so. It's been interesting seeing that acceleration of that acceptance of the nature of cloud. Even the fact that we're now doing this thing remotely and doing things via video conferencing and being able to do remote work or hybrid work, and any combination in the middle of that has been great. And we've shown that as possible, and lots of other enterprises in our space have seen that happen and have adopted it as well.
And you mentioned, Carlo, this journey started some time ago. I think you said 6-7 years ago. I'm guessing it hasn't all been plain sailing. I'm sure there have been challenges along the way and learnings for other telcos. What have been those main challenges, and have you overcome those challenges?
To be honest, I mean, this journey is still a journey, right? And so when we look at some of the challenges, the key part there is really the challenges with people's mindsets. When you initially start talking about cloud, being a telco, you always think about telco grade, and you think a lot about what you are providing to others in terms of being a provider. So it's kind of tough, switching the position a little bit, especially with public cloud, where you're offloading some of those responsibilities to another entity. So when we talk about challenges, I think that's the first step, is just being able to understand that, yes, you can trust someone else with your service. And as a telco, definitely we had to go through that journey. Internally, though, one of the challenges with cloud as well has been, really the as I alluded to earlier, the catching up of the application space. Just like any other company, we have some legacy systems, and some of the legacy systems have quite a significant amount of investment in them. And as we start to, when we first started, some of these applications still did not have what I would consider cloud native type architectures. We could do a lift and shift, like and move some of these processing and some of these storage virtually, but it still did not take full advantages of the cloud. So that's one. And then the second piece really is getting the right skill sets in place, getting the right people in the organization to start understanding what's possible with cloud, and leaving behind some of the tried and true concepts, right? And especially as you start understanding the ability to, for example, a good example is when we do start doing provisioning. There's the bare metal principle or way of doing things where you have to forecast quite a bit. And if you forecast, you have long lead times. You have to ensure that you are purchasing capacity way ahead of time. And if you miss your forecast, the lead times are long, so to be able to correct that particular error in your forecasting. And with cloud, you can start investing. You're able to adjust a lot more quickly. You're a lot more agile. So a lot of those processes really have to evolve and evolve with the adoption of cloud. So, like I said, the challenges are still there. We're still having some applications that are legacy that still needs to be refreshed from a technology standpoint. But as we refresh, we have to ensure that we have this policy and full support from all the leaders in the organization to go cloud first and to look at that as the first option and the only option, quite honestly, for any technology refreshes.
Thanks. And Anthony, I mean, you work with telcos across the world. What Carlo's been saying, is that a familiar story? Do you see the same challenges, or does it vary a little based on geography or maturity of the telco, for example?
Yeah, I mean, Carlo's probably one of the best examples, right? He used to live like 5 minutes up the street from me. He was based in Dallas. Now he sees the other side of the world. So I think he has a great perspective of kind of both ends of the spectrum. But I would say, when you look at it regionally, I think there is pluses and minuses. There's pros and cons, right? So the cons are clearly we're an industry where latency matters, right? So, today you're moving an IT workload and maybe latency is less of an issue. But when you start talking about the next generation of moving network workloads to the cloud, latency is a real thing. So kind of these geographical distributions of where you have physical presence from, the big cloud scale guys really makes a difference. And sometimes this is what's driving choices in terms of which cloud you choose for which service. And this is, this is really critical. On the other hand, in terms of the positive side, like Carlo was saying, things such as, we have this internal term we call cloud at scale. Us as an industry, we need to do cloud at scale. Gmail can be down for a few hours, WhatsApp can be down, but imagine if the Globe network goes down for 4 hours. I hate to kind of like exaggerate it, but at the end of the day, people's lives could be at risk. So, we build carrier grade stuff, right? We build mission critical stuff. So it's really important what you build uses the right infrastructure in the right way. And I think public cloud infrastructure allows you to do this, right? Whether it's redundancy or high availability zones or things like that. Even if you're coming from an emerging country, or if you're in the middle of, Africa or anything like that, it still gives you access to some of this infrastructure. So I think there are pros and cons depending on regions. And I think, I know the web scale guys are really focusing on making sure that we provide the equity across the regions. And I think this is still an evolving space.
Yeah, and Carlo, I think before joining Globe, you were at AT&T, right? And I'm interested to understand how different is thinking about public cloud adoption at Globe versus a US telco, the home of public cloud.
Quite honestly, there's strikingly some similarities, quite a number of similarities with respect to cloud adoption. There's still the whole, with AT&T being such a large company, there's all this tendency of, hey, you know what, we don't use other providers, we use internal cloud, and seeing that journey, in fact, of AT&T going through that much more internally focused view of how to provide these cloud services to actually partnering up with some of the larger public cloud providers to be able to solve those types of problems. So interestingly enough, I think the biggest difference I would see is from not necessarily a presence perspective. Of course, in the U.S., when you talk about latency, you have a lot more selection in terms of what's there and what's available within the domestic footprint. Where we are in the Philippines, as an example, our choices are limited. We have to cross the ocean. We have to rely on submarine cables, as an example, and ensure we have strong network redundancy in terms of reaching the closest points in the region. And so that's one of the main differences, right? We have to rely on submarine cables, and we're much more susceptible to things like typhoons and cable repair ships and schedules of those kind of things, right? But we mitigate that through a good plan for reliability, resiliency, and so we're able to utilize cloud in a very reliable manner. One of the other things that we've noticed, of course, in this side of the world is skill sets. We'll talk a little bit more about that because we talked about the people aspect of cloud adoption. In the Philippines, which is really an emerging economy, there's a lot more. First of all, the level of the talent and the development of talent is not as mature as some of the developed countries. And the skill sets that you find there, of course, are always available and accessible and wanting to look and work in much more developed markets, like, for example, in our area, the closest area there would be Singapore or Hong Kong in the past, right? So in terms of competing for talent, we're really truly competing outside the country and competing globally. So talent in the cloud adoption space is one of the key elements of being able to be successful in cloud here in the Philippines.
And if we just stick with that discussion around skills and the talent required to make this migration towards public cloud, are you in a good place today, do you feel, in terms of having the right capabilities around you?
Well, we are in a good place in terms of the current talent, but we can always use some more. I think the reality is everybody is looking for good talent in the cloud space right now. And so, as I said, you're competing. The interesting thing about the phenomenon of our environment right now with the pandemic is it really has pushed the envelope and the comfort levels of different companies to be able to hire people that work remotely. So now, people from the Philippines could potentially be working in the US remotely, and that's much more acceptable, in terms of competency. So in Globe, one of the things that we definitely have started, and for example, is we realized that we have to also ensure that we're growing our own talent in this space. We've launched a cloud cadetship program within the company to develop and continue to develop talent in this space, and we've found that to be very, very successful. We've also been really looking for adoption and really evangelizing the whole concept of cloud, even within the company, and we've created things like a cloud community of practice where members from across the whole organization, even non-IT people, can participate in online learning sessions, trainings, and become hands-on and to better understand cloud, so we can always continuously comb our ranks within Globe and be able to identify also latent talent that may be part of the organization.
And sometimes we forget that Amdocs has also become a cloud-native company, so that search for talent is something that occupies your mind, I guess, as well, Anthony.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you ask me, what's the one thing that keeps me up at night? It's this kind of global talent crunch. And I think Carla was right. It's not just, it's not just us, right? Like every industry, all the way from mining to healthcare, you name an industry, we're all going after the same resource pools of these cloud skill sets of people, right? And so it's a problem. And I think the way you tackle it, the way you solve it is clearly, I think as an industry, and this is kind of like talking to everyone that listens to it, I think as an industry, what the last 18 months has shown us is that we've been moved to, I would say, we've kind of become the backbone of society, right?
Yeah. Carlo, Anthony, good luck with your continued cloud journeys, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.